Hello, everybody. This is Tom O'Hare and Shelley Honeycutt from Pivotal College Years for our next conversation, talking college. Shelley, it's good to see you today. That's a nice background.
I believe it's Oxford, Tom, but good to see you. Good to be talking college this morning and helping some families with next steps.
Yeah, most definitely. So our purpose in doing this, the process payoff, is to try to provide some information on what's going on right now that we're seeing in our practices, as well as we're seeing out on the airwaves from watching and talking to our colleagues in the college higher education enrollment world. This week, the U.S. News and Report put out their updated list of top schools in the country. I don't know if you saw it, Shelley, but there's not a lot of new ones. There's, in my opinion, still the same supply and demand schools where there's more kids applying than they have seats for. Although there are some wonderful schools on that list that everybody should consider. I just wanted to bring up the conversation about how to do your search and how you might be advising some of your clients.
Well, I agree with you, Tom, and many families, when they come into our private practice, automatically go to those types of reports and think they're the only way to create or curate a college list. And it's not, just not. They are all the same every year, even in the different categories. The same players are hitting the top 5 slots. And think outside of the box. Just because you haven't heard the name of the college doesn't mean they're not a perfect place for your student. We have beautifully curated lists, especially for certain majors where it's hard to identify the schools that will prepare your student, especially for grad school. And sometimes they can do it even better than some of the brand names that we hear on a regular basis.
Right. And those unknown need to be uncovered are also institutions that are looking for enrollment. They're looking for students, and they will utilize their resources, financial resources, to help students and families enroll, as some of the others that are on that report won't. So I think it's a true reality. Yes, we want to have a broad scope of schools, but we want to be realistic in the fact that some are going to award money and some aren't.
Exactly. And for example, I'm working with a student who is looking at pre-med, and we have a beautiful pre-med list for students that are looking to ensure that they can get into grad school and prepare for grad school from undergraduate. Because, as you know, getting into med school is incredibly difficult and usually doesn't happen the first time around unless you have a 3.7 or higher.
Right. Yeah, I have a friend of mine down in Florida. His son is on his 3rd try.
Yeah.
Has the desire, has the goal, but he's on the 3rd try. And he's in that 3.7, 3.8 category. So it's a very competitive place to be in today's world.
Incredibly competitive. But one of the schools I love for that is Case Western University, and we never think about them. And I consider them a hidden Ivy. They have a special program over there. If you get in as a freshman, you're guaranteed a spot in their med school if you keep a 3.0 or higher. And Harvard can't do that for you. Brown University won't do that for you. And many of the other top name brands. So there's definitely some great small colleges or unknown colleges that the families out there can take a look at and maybe be surprised by the award letters and the acceptances.
Yeah, most definitely. Testing. I've been continuing to read a lot of stuff on Facebook groups, parent groups, college planning groups, as well as the professional associations. Should I, can I, where can I, with test optional is a very common conversation. What do you think? What do you think? Is it worth it for a student to stress the crap out of themselves to take the SATs?
Well, I think they should give it a good try and see where they can land. But many times I think it comes down to deciding which test you're better at, SAT or ACT. In New England, we're just SAT snobs and we think it's the only test that exists. But we know that you will test distinctively better 85% of the time on one test versus the other, right? So figure
Yep.
out which test you're better at. Take a couple of runs at it, prepare for it, but don't over prepare. I think that's a waste of your time. There's better activities you could be doing, right? So you prepare, but don't over prepare, because if your test score is way up here and your GPA is way down here, admissions must draw a conclusion.
Right, that
Right.
you're a better tester than you are a studier. And the opposite can be said, your GPA is high and your test score is low.
Right.
So, what's the true indicator?
I think it's an over focus even now under COVID. And I would tell students, do your best, get your sub score. And it's simply a mathematic equation. Look at the 50 percentile for that school. And if you're not in that range, do not submit.
Right, right.
Just
Go
can't.
with your GPA. And as you know, I talk a lot about from the standpoint of developing a communication plan, engaging school representatives, educate them on who you are and why you're a good candidate for their school. In the business world, we call it sales and marketing
Yeah.
and networking. And I am a true believer. I was doing it this morning before we started, typing up some email content for a student to use to send back to a school to introduce themselves and get that one-on-one appointment.
I think that's super important, making those connections, and especially last year where admissions were home, and many still are. It's a great connection and a way to get your application at the top of the pile.
Yeah, I'm asking my clients, my students that I'm working with and their families, don't get stressed out over testing. Look at yourself in that broad scope, but make sure you educate the schools on what's going on.
And I have to say, last year we had many successes with not submitting test scores. I would say it was significantly better for the female candidates in our practice versus male candidates. I can't really pinpoint why, but that was definitely accurate. However, I would use that if I had to. If I am below that 50 percentile, I would suppress that score and really focus on putting forth my best essay, supplemental essays, and transcript, obviously.
Yep, most definitely. Good advice. I'm writing about things that seniors should be doing. I know we both have a good philosophy and approach to what are you doing during the summer. The summer's over. So some of those missed activities need to be done in earnest, especially if you're looking to apply early action November 1, November 15th. What's your top three?
My top three that I see them miss, right, on a regular basis would be make sure that you've requested your transcripts early, because if you're going early action and they don't get in within 3 weeks after your application, they're pushing you to regular action. Make sure that you have 2 primary subject teacher recommenders and that they are also in, right? Because many schools require that. And if they don't have 2 primary subject teachers, and they find that out much later in the process, they're looking at everything and then the recommendations, then they discover they're not science and math, English, or history, they push you to regular action. Okay. And getting that primary essay refined. It really should have been, in my practice, it's refined by Labor Day, because you have supplemental essays to be writing from now until November 1. But I think it's important to get applications out. For the most part in our practice, I want them out by December 1, regardless of the deadline, because that's where all the money is, all the merit aid. If the school gives merit aid, let me clarify.
Right, for everybody. For everybody, yeah. Early action, I use October 15th as a date that they should have all everything buttoned up and ready to go. It allows for a couple of weeks for missing information or those extra stresses. But yeah, so those are good 3 top, and I would concur with those for sure.
What else would you add?
Well, I continue to be that conscious person or pain in the butt from the standpoint of keeping that communication going.
Yeah.
You know, making sure that that's number 4 so that the school remembers who you are. But yeah, your essay, your recommendations, your transcript, and making sure that you complete the common application, promoting your best activities. We do have a good spot. You did a video last year that's still out there on YouTube about how to complete the activity section of the common application. So that's a good thing to use. It's part of Pivotal College Years. It's part of the services that are offered through the online portal, and we'll talk about that at the end. But yeah, I would say completing your common app accurately is number 4 or 5 for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I think that really is your first face to admissions, and they decide, remember, 7 minutes they take to decide if they're going to go on and take their time to read. So that
Yeah.
activity section needs to be refined, and it should be quantifying who you are.
And I guess I would add, when you're writing and responding to some of the supplemental questions, remember, or at least in my mind, those questions are how much you know about the school. Your
Yeah.
essay is your personal essay. It can be everything and anything, but it's not necessarily about what you're going to get from the school itself. It's not selling you to the school and the school to you. The supplemental questions are asked to learn that. How much do you really know about the school when you toured, when you want an information session, when you did a virtual evaluation? Do you know the school beyond just the fact that they have 8 cereal dispensers in their lunch facility? You know, my youngest son, when he went on a tour with one of my kids, I think I told you this, you know, he was in awe at one school because they had 8 different cereal dispensers in the dining hall. Well, when he went on his tours, he looked for the 8 dispensers. But knowing what the schools have to offer and connecting yourself, that is, to me, a very true indicator is how much time you spent learning about the schools that you're thinking about applying to.
I agree with that, and what you will bring to campus
Right.
to improve the campus.
Right.
But go into the department, look at the department you'll be studying under, and find unique things that truly interest you and talk about them.
Yeah. So you have some time, seniors, parents that are seniors, you have time to keep after them. You can use Pivotal College Years with some various reminders and information that's built into it. For families of juniors and sophomores, you have more time. So take advantage of it. Make sure that you're developing a plan, developing a process so that you can do it while you're worrying about everything else in the household. Scholarships seem to be left to the last minute. I like students starting now to start doing some scholarship searches. What's your thought on scholarships?
Well, I think that until November 1, December 1, if your applications are not out, which will be your biggest round of scholarship money, your institutional aid, your
Right.
institutional merit, right? Then you need to focus on that first. Get those applications refined as good as you can. Get them, the supplementals, and try to collect that institutional scholarship aid first, merit aid. And then in December, it starts to lighten up. So I tell the kids, you know, start going to guidance, because private scholarships many times open from December to April. I really don't understand the April deadline, but these private scholarship foundations don't understand the college timeline, so they still go into April. But I would say that's when I would start looking at private scholarships. And the good news is you probably have written so many supplemental essays that you can use them for the scholarships. So,
Right.
and
Most
I would
definitely.
do regionally, work on the educational foundations in your county, in your town. That's where the low hanging fruit is. And I think you have less competition.
Yeah. And I know we've talked about putting out some information and adding it to the portal on scholarships, and that's something families should be looking for in the next couple of months.
We do also have a Google how to do scholarship search via Google. I call it
Right.
Googling for dollars. And
Yep.
then there's also within the portal, there are the regional tuition programs for every part of the US in there.
Yep. Excellent, excellent. What do we know about October?
We know that the FAFSA opens. It's not the deadline
Right.
because we get crazy calls about that.
So the FAFSA, yeah, the FAFSA, the doors open for the FAFSA. I usually tell my families to wait at least 10 days so that the bugs can be realized and some of the torturous stresses can be taken away, and then get yourself going on the financial aid side of the world.
Right. I would say get the FAFSA done first, right? But it's not a race. If your student's doing early action, I would put a self-imposed deadline of December 1, get that done. And then if your students have to do a CSS profile put out by the College Board, figure that out and don't go past December 31 getting that in.
Right, for anybody, don't go past
No.
December 31 for sure.
No.
And if you're a returning student, a parent of a returning student who's going back, don't forget to do it.
Right.
Because if you don't, even the student loan that everybody gets, the direct subsidized and unsubsidized student loan won't be available for an upperclassman. So it's important to put that date upperclassman. You don't necessarily have to do it as early as a new student coming in, because the schools aren't going to look at it until probably after the winter holiday break, but you want to make sure that you get yours in too. And if you're a transfer student, you don't want to miss out on money that's available. And more schools are putting money into scholarships and need-based aid for transfer students because they're finally realizing,
right,
goodness, they're finally realizing it's a population to enroll. For those students who leave in their freshman class, the transfers can backfill it. So yeah, and we'll be talking more about the FAFSA in weeks to come. I'm throwing this out to Shelley because she doesn't know it yet, but I think we're probably going to do a workshop or some type of a session on completing the FAFSA. And there's a lot of organizations that are doing it. Be very careful that you're using organizations that are providing it free of charge. Make sure you take your time to do it accurately when you're working on it. I think finally, we still have these things called student loans that have to be repaid. The government's unfreezing them in January of 2022. Yeah, so students, well, they're not students anymore, they're borrowers who are making their monthly payments that have been on hold for about 18, almost 24 months.
Right.
I got to get back in. I don't think what's your crystal ball saying, because mine is showing that I don't think they're going to extend it again.
They're saying they
do
won't.
Some forgiveness.
There may be some overarching forgiveness for the federal loans. They're saying they won't extend the moratorium on it. But I think that people have been using what they would normally dedicate to federal funds to their private loan payments, and now this is going to present a problem for them. So I would say folks in that situation might want to consider refinancing their private student loan so that that payment might be more manageable and that they'll have enough money to allocate towards the federal loan payments once again.
Very good advice. Yeah, refinancing is still a very popular thing, and the rates are low. Students still have to be having, borrowers have to have made a certain number of payments after they've graduated from school, but it's a great way to take those high interest private loans and bring them down. And if need be, stretch your monthly payment so that you can fit it into the budget that I know all new students that just got out of school have done with their understanding their living expenses as the data for. I know the push to get your budgets done is really something that's hot on your minds if you're a new student borrower. So
that's a great point.
Yeah, take advantage of refinancing.
That's a great point. So I would encourage everyone to get on auto debit payments because you get discounts both in federal and private loans typically, and you don't miss payments because we do know in the first 12 months, a large majority of students miss at least one payment, and that impacts your credit, and that could be a snowball effect. So get on the auto debit payment. It just forces you to behave.
Yeah, that's a good reason why are a good explanation as to why the cosigner release program is either 24 or 36 months.
Right.
Because it takes that long for someone to get into a discipline of making their monthly payments on time. The other part is be cautious about the public service forgiveness program. It's still being reworked. It's still being reassigned to a new servicer. And that's another program where if you miss one payment, that 10-year clock starts over again and again and again. So electronic payments is the way to go when it comes to that. So this morning we've talked about quite a few things that parents before college, during and after college need to be thinking about. It's the core of pivotal college years. I know Shelley and I have both written and are talking about this thing called college planning paralysis.
Yes.
It's our tongue-in-cheek focus on the stress and strains as parents ourselves, the stress and strains of dealing with college planning. You can't wait till the end. So pivotal college years, designed and built by Shelley, supported by myself and other colleagues, is there to try to provide some support for you to use, resources to help.
Yeah, it goes in a nice chronological order, and it's our private methodology that we use with our private clients. There's nothing hidden or held back. It's all in there for you to take advantage of.
Yep. So if you have any questions about it, you can find us at pivotalcollegeyears.com. Send us questions, send us insights that you might want us to be talking about, and catch us again on our next YouTube program. Thank you, Shelley, for being with us today.
Thanks, Tom.